Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live streamed Guardian Live event. I'm Jonathan Freedland, columnist for The Guardian, and it is a real pleasure to welcome you all this afternoon, especially because it is the middle of the day. Thank you for carving out time in your day to be with us, and I hope you're really going to enjoy the next hour of conversation. Before I introduce our very special guest, I wanted to say just a few words about how this all is going to work, and particularly how this platform works. We're going to be doing this for an hour live until 2 p.m. London time. For the first half or so, I'm going to be talking with our guest. It'll be me and him in conversation. And then after that, we're going to open it up to your questions. And some of you have indeed sent your questions in advance. Thank you for those. And I'll be drawing on some of those. And then during the event itself, there is an opportunity to submit your questions via the Q&A button, which you can see on your screen to the right of this sort of window. Do put your questions in there and bear in mind that it's not just me, everyone will be able to see them, they'll be visible. You do also have the option to like other people's questions. And look, we may not be able to get through all of them this afternoon because there are a lot, I know, but we will try to put as many as we can to our guests. So obviously do try and keep that question and answer box for questions. If you've got any other comments or issues, if there's anything technical, do use the moderator chat option to speak to them. So let me say a word or two about our guest, very well known to so many of us, not least because from 2014 until 2019, he was the president of the European Council. Before that, he had been a prime minister of his native country of Poland. And not just that, but served in that role for longer than anyone else, the longest serving premier in democratic Poland's history. Before that, the founder of the Civic Platform Party in Poland, and before that, an activist for democracy and for freedom in Poland, involved with the Solidarity movement, indeed in its birthplace and his hometown of Gdansk. And it's from there that he joins us today. A warm Guardian Live welcome to President Donald Tusk. And there you are. Very, very good to see you. Thank you. And we can see in the backdrop there your beloved hometown. And we were saying before we came online that we were going to do this in person, and it would have been a great pleasure to welcome you warmly in person. But we're going to do it virtually anyway, but no less warm for that. I thought, Donald Tusk, that we would kick off with something about your background and how it might have connected with your later career. And I know that you were once, by your own description, that you ran with a crowd of football hooligans. You were also once a manual laborer who specialized in doing work at dizzying heights involving specialist equipment. And you were also once a journalist who had to regularly face politicians who were constantly telling lies. And so I'm bound to ask, Donald Tusk, which of those experiences prepared you best for Brexit?
Thank you for your first of all for your invitation and hello everybody. I'm really happy to be with you today. Unfortunately online only, but better than nothing. It's I should say that I really love your introduction. Maybe you can repeat it. It sounded really interesting. Yes, I think it was something really important for me. My very, in fact, rich life experiences. To be my first profession is, in fact, a history teacher. This is what I was prepared for during my studies at Gdańsk University. But then, because of the martial law in Poland. I was not able to work as a teacher. I was also an activist of the independent students movement and solidarity movement. And then I became a physical worker. It's almost 8 years. Fascinating experience. I think that, in fact, also as a late prime minister, party leader, I could understand a little bit better people because of this kind of experiences. It's and hooligan, maybe it's too much to say, but this was also important for when I became a professional politician, if I can use this term. This experience with from my youth when I was football fan or even hooligan. Okay, I mean this readiness to fight for something what is really important for you. It really matters also today. And okay, today I'm much more moderate. Maybe if you are a football fan, you are a radical one. In politics, I try to be all my life. In fact, I was dedicated to this moderate, center-oriented, liberal ideas and ideologies. Maybe not ideologies, because I really hate this term ideology. But anyway, to be worker, underground activist, historian, teacher, bread seller. I'm also an author of books about Gdańsk's history. Yeah, I think it's much better when especially when you are in power, to have this different kind point of view, sensitivities, etc.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was half joking about how you'd been prepared, and I particularly was focused on Brexit, just because I know you were a political journalist, in the sense of, under the communist regime, you were involved with a sort of underground newsletter, and you'd have been dealing with a regime there that didn't always tell the truth. And with my tongue in my cheek, I was thinking that might have prepared you for dealing with the British government over Brexit. But I'm definitely going to come back to Brexit. And go on.
Yeah. Sorry. For me, it would be difficult, to find a specific or special features which were, more necessary or more useful for me for Brexit than other political activities. Because, in fact, when it comes to procedures, it was something, negotiations, treaties, opponents and advocates, etc. But emotionally, Brexit was really, it was something important for me as a person, not only as a politician, not because I was a football fan but what was much more important for me, and is still important, and this is why I am a Remainer by nature. I am really a dedicated Remainer, maybe more than typical British Remainer, because in fact my whole life started with some British experiences. In fact, my first book, which was which I was fascinated by, it was Robinson Crusoe. The first hero was Francis Drake, and I was with him when he defeated the Invincible Armada. What was the name of his flagship? It was Golden Hind, if I remember well. Yeah. It was something really, really important. And then culture. I mean, pop music, rock and roll, the Beatles. As a football fan, I really love Premier League. Arsenal is my beloved football club. It's
me as well.
Politics. Yeah. Oh, it's not the best time for us, but could be worse. Even. Yeah. But in politics, And this is why I was so sad, even depressed and angry with the whole idea of Brexit and referendum, because in politics, when I was the young underground solidarity movement activist, for us, for the whole generation, in fact, people like Ronald Reagan, but especially Margaret Thatcher. This was they were our role models and icons, in fact, not because of some internal issue, but because of the fact that, for example, Margaret Thatcher was one of the most consistent anti-Soviet, pro-Polish independence politicians. I still remember, it can sound a little bit strange, but I still remember this very special moment in my life when Margaret Thatcher visited Poland. It was still under communism, under martial law and General Jaruzelski. It was in 1988. And he visits officially Poland, but then she decided to visit also Gdańsk and Gdańsk shipyard, surprisingly for Jaruzelski. And I was there. Thousands of shipyard workers, trade unions, activists, can you imagine, applauding and chanting for Margaret Thatcher. Trade unionists. It can sound very strange in London, but for us, for the whole solidarity movement, she was something really, really, really important. When we decided, as opposed to be a part of the EU, to be a member of the European Union, the most important guarantee that this is really a good company was the fact that the UK was also a part of the EU. You can imagine why not Germany was the biggest attraction for the Poles as a member of the EU. And the UK was also a kind of guarantee for my generation and people who thought about politics, about freedoms, about values like me, similar to me, was that in fact the UK was a guarantee that traditional liberal conservative values will be always present in the European narrative. And also what was also important for me as a prime minister in Poland, that the UK was a guarantee also, as the kind of balance for Germany. I am not anti-German politician, quite the opposite. I have a reputation as a rather pro-German politician.
Yes.
But it was and it would be much better for Europe as a whole, and for sure for my part of Europe, if we have still the UK as a member, also to rebalance this superpower on the European level, superpower, which is of course Germany. And
yes,
yeah, so there are so many reasons why my determination to stop this idea of referendum and then Brexit, etc., was deeply rooted in my history and my belief in and I still believe that and this is why I also think that it was one of the biggest mistakes in the European political history.
Yes. I mean, you've got us exactly to where I was heading there. One of your aides once said, look, for him, talking about you, Brexit is a catastrophic breach of the liberal democratic order that he fought for as a young man, an unraveling of everything he believes in. And I think it explains something about you, which was, it did strike people here. And I'm guessing that most of our audience today are probably like you, Remainers. They would describe themselves that way. And that was a sense you conveyed that this was not just politics for you. You often seemed, if it's not too strong a word, heartbroken by the idea of Britain leaving. And I wonder if that is something that did you feel at the time that you had that in common with, for example, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, that you had both grown up under, because she obviously famously in East Germany, that you'd grown up under communism. Was there a sort of bond between the two of you as you were dealing with Brexit where you both understood why this was a problem for the reasons you've just described.
Yeah, but of course there are some differences between me and Angela Merkel.
Of course.
Even if we have also the same, more or less the same family roots, and because the grandfather of Angela Merkel was born here in my country, and was one of the grandfather was a senator of the Freistaat Danzig, I mean, for the free city of Gdańsk before the Second World War. And of course, we had always more or less the same, or at least very similar views when it comes to the strategic perspective for Europe and how important it is to be united. Also because of our experience with communism and etc. But as I said, for me, as a Pole, it was even more important because sometimes, what I feel, I think that I can say that I felt like a children with divorced parents. I mean, Europe and the UK. It was like parents, and this is why the divorce was so painful for me. Also because, for me, Europe matters, not only as an organization, and not because I was the president of the European Council. It's not because of my interest, but mainly because it's still for me, and for sure also for Angela Merkel. Europe is a unique, when we look at the whole history of the world, is a unique, continent of freedom. This is my personal definition of Europe. It's, I mean, continent and islands, together with Great Britain, of course. Which means that it's much more important on the organization of treaties or procedures or business, common businesses, free trade, even free movement, because it's, in fact, Europe is about freedom. And Brexit is about borders. In fact, this very idea of Brexit is against freedom as the most important principle for all of us. And this is why it was for me really one of the most painful experience. But this is also, I was also so angry because for me it was absolutely, and it is still absolutely clear that Brexit was not a historical fatalism, but rather a fatal mistake. Of course, if you ask my good friend Norman Davies about Brexit,
the historian,
a historian, famous not only in my country, I suppose. And I asked him, of course, during the Brexit campaign, and he told me, in fact, Brexit started about 15,000 years ago, when the island drifted away from the continent, and it continues. Okay, it's Norman Davies and his very specific sense of humor, but we can continue this analysis. It was a process. It was a kind of fatalism, someone could say, but we could live. What I feel, we could live with these natural and deep-rooted differences, tensions between the continent and the UK, because we did, in fact, and I still remember, of course, this very special status of the UK and this very special status of the membership of the EU. My beloved Margaret Thatcher, with her "give my money back," with this no to Jacques Delors when he proposed this faster integration in Europe, etc., etc. But okay, but we lived with this. I mean, you can sometimes you can argue with your closest partner. It's like in our private life, but it doesn't mean that everyone who who have some problems, some conflicts, should divorce it. And
can I ask you, sorry, but you've explained the pain and the anger, and you also said that you tried to make that case to British governments as soon as 2014 when you arrived as President of the European Council. Was there more that you and the European Union could have done now in retrospect and to prevent this happening? And I tell you the example I've got in my mind, which is in the referendum campaign, it became very clear very quickly that the immigration was a massive issue, rightly or wrongly. I, along with a lot of Guardian readers, will think wrongly that it should not have been an issue. But once it was, do you think that you and the leaders of the European Union could have said, look, if you really have some kind of issue with immigration, let's try and work this out after the referendum. We'll find a way. Not exactly an opt-out, but we found a way for you with the currency. We found a way with the rebate. We'll solve this. And could that have potentially prevented the vote for leave? Whereas instead, there seemed to be the case that the European Union during those crucial months did not really shift and never sort of reached out that hand. Do you worry about that, given how strongly and passionately you feel about that this was a heartbreaking event for Europeans like us here and like you there in Poland?
I understand your suggestion. It's more suggestion than a question, in fact, that we should and we could do something more to stop this idea, or at least to win the referendum after the decision of David Cameron to organize this referendum. But sorry, I can't agree with you. With your suggestion, because we did more as a European Union. I was there. I mean, as a part of this our European team for the negotiations for this 6 baskets. But we have to start with the original sin of Prime Minister Cameron. This very idea of referendum was the reason why Brexit happened. Not the result of our negotiations before the referendum. Frankly speaking, and I am absolutely sure that I am right here. No one during the referendum campaign, no one cared about the result of this pre-referendum negotiation. This legendary 6 baskets, and even David Cameron didn't use these arguments during the campaign at all. Despite the fact that we offered to David Cameron, frankly speaking, more than we could and than we should in a legal context. Because in the negotiations, we had anyway some treaties, some procedures, some rules, some principles, and maybe I shouldn't say it so openly, but in fact we did more than the legal context allowed us to help him. Frankly speaking, I was the politically the main negotiator. I mean, on the level of prime ministers, and I didn't negotiate our interest. I mean, the European interest, frankly speaking. I asked David Cameron very openly, what should I do? Tell me, please tell me, David, what should I do to help you? Not what I should do to win something for the EU. What is your interest? And we did it, but no one cared about it. The problem was, I will be very blunt, sorry. I think the real question is, what should you do more to stop this, especially this idea of referendum? Because it was always more or less the same mood, political mood in England. I'm 50-50, I think. It's always with the good and evil, light and dark. It's almost always, it's our nature. It's not only in politics, 50-50. And then, of course, if we have some tendencies, some trends, massive trends, some high tides in politics, okay, it's not your role to stop it, to change the world, but you can at least avoid a mistake. The Brexit is a result of, as I said, a fatal political mistake of David Cameron.
In calling that referendum.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was important.
Yeah.
First of all, and you know it was a miscalculation. Prime Minister Cameron thought that first of all that he would win the referendum. Second, that maybe he would be obliged to build a new coalition with the Liberals, and they would stop the referendum as an idea. This was the as I said, the original sense of the referendum. It was almost impossible to win the referendum if you David Cameron organized a referendum which questioned the membership of the British membership in the EU. And after this decision, he tried to be a leader of the campaign for Remain. It was politically, emotionally, logically, absolutely not impossible to win.
In other words, right. So the error, the mistake, was in calling the referendum in the first place, because once you had called that referendum, and especially if you were going to be the one campaigning for Remain, it was inevitable that you would lose that referendum, in your view.
This is what I felt then, because some of my colleagues, for example, Angela Merkel, were more optimistic when it comes to this possible result of the referendum. But I still remember that after my tete-a-tete with David Cameron, when he in fact promised me, we will win, Donald, don't be afraid. And I visited then, just by coincidence, my group of friends in Bath. And Bath, as you know, is a rather liberal place and for sure pro-European place in England. And we, of course, we have discussed. They knew what was my formal role, that I'm the president of the European Council, and we have we discussed about this referendum. And I was shocked that among them, I mean, academics, liberal journalists, and really rather pro-European minds, and that all of them were hesitating. Some of them quite openly told me, Donald, we don't know how will you vote, but maybe for exit,
Yeah.
And then in Bath, and then it was for me absolutely clear that the game is over. And after that, the whole campaign, the Brexiteers were really vigorous, powerful, with energy, emotions, of course lies, but at the same time determination. It was, frankly speaking, I am obsessed by European unity and our friendship and brotherhood with Great Britain. But frankly speaking, the exit campaign was much more interesting in some sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was, of course, angry as you, as with all these lies about the NHS and the nature of Brussels, etc. But the campaign for Remain was so boring, like our procedures in Brussels, and totally without emotions. Frankly speaking, you showed your determination just after the referendum.
Yeah,
I still remember that the huge march in London for Europe, for unity, etc. I was so moved. I was crying, frankly speaking. And I am also a very emotional guy. It's also in politics, but it was too late.
Yeah. There are many questions I could ask you all about that process, but I'm just with one eye on the clock and questions now coming in. I'm just going to press it forward just a bit and say, are there things, you've spoken of your regret that it happened. I think a lot of people watching will feel the same way. Are there nevertheless things that the European Union can do now, things that are possible now that Britain has gone? In other words, is there a silver lining for a pro-European like you to the cloud of Brexit? Can you now, European Union, now get on with some things that we, the British, were holding up?
Yes, I think that we can propose something positive for both sides of the channel. I mean, because it must be, like before, it must be our common effort to, if not to arrange a, rejoining, because it's maybe it's not as simply as someone can think today. But
although I do want to come back
all,
to rejoining.
Yes, of course. It's for me. I will. I would not. I wouldn't hesitate for seconds if I'm able to do something constructive. Not only because I want to stop also my permanent crying and that I'm so sad and that I want to be much more efficient in this. And I have some ideas and some thoughts, not about procedures of what can we do to at least to minimize the damages of Brexit. Your question is very specific because for me, as I said, Brexit is mainly about borders, barriers, tariffs. In fact, Brexit is an idea how to make our lives harder, not easier. For me, it was always my political philosophy. I'm here not to prepare huge revolutions, to change the whole world, etc., or to provoke conflicts or wars. I don't want to be, a martyr or hero. I want, to make people's life easier. And Brexit is per se the opposite idea. I mean, it's everything what is connected with Brexit is to make our life harder, and it's about borders. It means it's about freedom, but also about our common interests. But
what I had in mind was whether or not the European Union could now move forward on integration and come closer in terms of even foreign security, defence cooperation. Now that the annoying, pesky Brits are out of the way, you can make things faster.
I'm not sure, but what I'm sure about is absolutely that we have to reduce these damages of Brexit. What I'm afraid of today is that we still are ready on both sides to start the stupid, blame game. For example, the latest events, pandemic and vaccines. Can you feel how easy it is today to provoke new conflicts and to blame each other, for example, for the lack of vaccine? We have and why I mentioned this problem, because what I feel is that first of all we need to remember that Brexit has not changed our really the highest political priority, which are common for us, for the UK and for the EU. What we need is to also to recall that the biggest challenges are still the same, and there's no difference between us, no different interest when it comes to our position vis-à-vis China, our hopes and I hope also efforts to re-establish a good transatlantic relations, not in a competition between the EU and the UK, but together. Our politics and policy vis-à-vis Russia. It means also security and defense, but not only. And what is maybe the most important thing that we have to remember, that the UK and Europe, that we are here this is our role. our historical role to defend this set of values. We can call it liberal democracy. I have nothing against this term, even if it is today politically dangerous to say openly I am a liberal democrat. But I was born as a liberal democrat, and for me this is the best self-definition of Europe, including islands. I mean, liberal democracy is the whole set of values. Okay, maybe it looks a little bit boring, and I'm maybe a little bit naive, but there's nothing more important in politics than this question: how can we, the UK, Europe, I mean the EU and America, how can we together defend our fundamental values? And this is why my first proposal is to avoid any kind of useless tensions or blames. This is the first thing. And maybe one day we will, on both sides, we will realize that we can be again together. But first of all, what we should do is to control and to reduce damages caused by Brexit.
Yes, and work together. I mean, you mentioned there, you said maybe it's a hope that one day we'll come together more. And you famously tweeted, I think, or you quoted John Lennon's song "Imagine," that people may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. So let's just have that dream for a second, because so many people in advance today asked that. Graham Chesters said, I would like to give hope to my children and grandchildren. When do you think the UK, or what's left of it, perhaps imagining that Scotland may go its own way, will rejoin the EU, or what's left of that? John Bamber, do you think the UK will return to the EU, and how soon? Stephanie Hill, how easy would it be for the UK to rejoin the European Union? So lots of questions there. Let's just break it down into two parts. Before we get to the question of whether the UK would want to rejoin, do you think the European Union would have the UK back?
My main fear today is that we have also our own problem on the continent, in the EU. Undoubtedly, it's a of course it's I can recognize politicians with more or less the same views and opinions about UK, and with this very positive attitude like mine. It's no problem. But at the same time, as you can see, we have also our own problems. I mean that Brexit, and this is for me, it is one of the most important challenge, and it was when I was president of the European Council, how to stop this tendency, this trend of divisions and this political entropy. What should we do to make Brexit just an accident? I mean, and not a trend. I still remember my first phone call with Donald Trump, when he asked me with a clear hope in his voice, who is the next after Great Britain? Who is the next in the queue for exit? And I'm absolutely aware how many Trojan horses we have also inside the EU. We're hardly working for disintegration, for tensions, for many reasons, and how many neighbors, how many powers outside the EU are working also for at least how to weaken the EU as a political and especially economical superpower, and economic superpower. And this is why I think that it must be our common self-obligation in London, in Edinburgh, and in Dublin, everywhere, and on the continent. First of all, how to avoid the biggest risk, this which is visible and tangible, palpable. It's the risk of disintegration also on the continent. If you ask me if the EU is ready or will be ready to have Britain back as a member of the EU, my feeling and my instinct is that always, when you are ready, you will find at least a majority of the politicians, the elites, but also ordinary people who will be very, very happy if you decide to be back. It's undoubtedly.
I'm going to move on beyond all this in a moment because there's other questions to ask. But just the last bit, one on that, because we've talked about Britain rejoining. Scotland could well have a referendum on independence in the next few years, and they could vote yes. The polls suggest they will. And a part of the message of the Scottish National Party is that they would want to rejoin the European Union. Just on that, probably a brief answer because President Tusk has other things I want to ask you about. But what do you think? Would Scotland be allowed to join the EU, or will the Spanish worry that would set a precedent in terms of Catalonia and so on? What's your view on Scotland and joining?
Yeah, I have to be very cautious here because, I love Scotland. As you know, we have so many Poles as not only migrant, but also, in fact, citizens of your country, not only in Scotland, of course, but also in Scotland. And I really appreciate this very consistent, positive pro-European policy in Scotland. But at the same time, I want to be very cautious because, as I said, I love Great Britain as a whole. It's not, it's not my intention, to evoke any kind of negative emotions in the UK. Of course, I will always say that as a dedicated European, that if someone wants to be a part of the EU, I will be the first one to say welcome. But at the same time, it's not my dream to see Great Britain disunited. It's not my plan or my intention. You know what please understand me. What it's we want and we need all of you. And it's
yes, you don't want to be seen to be breaking up. Let's just talk about, because there's so much to say about Brexit and we could keep on with that. But just outside that, you're sitting there obviously in Poland. The Polish and particularly the Hungarian governments have repeatedly violated some of those democratic liberal norms that you rightly said kind of define your own politics. And I'm just wondering, at what point does the European Union itself have to say, look, there are some common standards here, and if you do not comply with them, if you keep breaking them, then eventually there isn't a place for you in the European Union. And if the European Union does not say that at any point to the government of Viktor Orban in Hungary, is there how meaningful is it to speak of a democratic European Union if individual member states can behave that way?
First of all, as you know, it's not just a European problem with this, reactionaries and far right, ethnic and religious nationalists, etc., etc. It's not only Hungary. It's not only my country. I am really sad that I can only agree with you about your diagnosis about Poland. But more or less, we have the same problem in the UK, and the Brexit campaign revealed, in fact, the very similar mood and fears and problems. Of course, Trumpism and America. It's not just a European trend or problem. But you're right. My responsibility when it comes to Orban, because he's part of my international party family. And Poland, I feel still responsible for my country. These two countries are the most visible and most spectacular governments, also because they govern. I mean, they are in power. But I will be the last person who would say, let's expel Poland from the EU. It's not only because I should say something like that, but I deeply believe that these are a seasonal problem. Seasonal. Yeah. I mean, Orban and Kaczynski and the whole this new nationalism or this illiberal democracy, you can use so many terms, in fact, about the same phenomenon, which this victory of Joe Biden, I think, is a good sign for all of us, not only because of geopolitical context, that now we can restore our transatlantic ties, and we all, I mean, at least people like me, we all feel much better and safer now after Trump's failure. But we have to be as patient as, for example, Americans were. I mean, 4 years with Trump was enough. Orban and Kaczynski, they are unfortunately much more resilient and right. More effective and maybe more pragmatic, because it was anyway a miracle that the Americans tolerated such a strange, extravagant, ugly presidency like this Trump presidency. But anyway, I think that also in Poland and in Hungary, also, we have, as I mentioned, also some quite significant political parties and political camps in other countries. I am absolutely sure that we can defeat them, under one condition: we have to be as determined and as they are. There's nothing for free, It's I mean, if you want to, and one thing I should admit this, they are really determined. It's more or less the same problem which we had during the referendum in the UK. I'm totally against Orban or Kaczynski or Nigel Farage or etc. But one thing is absolutely clear: they are determined. They want to fight. They are emotional. They are authentic sometimes. Even it's just an apparent paradox that they use lies as a regular and permanent political tool. But in some sense, they are very authentic and genuine in their emotions, which means that it's our role and our duty today to evoke and to provoke also emotions. I can't agree with this also fatalism. I'm not talking about your question, but I can't agree with this, opinion that liberal democracy must be weaker than authoritarianism or less efficient. I totally disagree with this opinion that lies and negative emotions are definitely stronger than positive emotions or the truth in politics. The truth can be, by nature, much stronger argument, but under one condition: if there are advocates for the truth, fighters. And this is why, maybe also because of my life experience, I know that politics is it's rather a boxing ring than theater or university or museum. It's about fight. It's about, not in the bad sense of the word, but this is why I'm quite optimistic, because I know that on our side you can find today more and more politicians with energy, ready to fight, talented enough to simplify their communication, because it's also not the truth that lie is always simpler than the truth. Quite the opposite. but under one condition also, that you have talented and determined politicians on our side.
Yes. Let me just put to you this question. I'm going to come back to that right at the end, the very last point you made. But just before we do that, one questioner asked, if Europe is about freedom, how do we reconcile with the views of the people who are anti the European Union, and also even somebody like Varoufakis, the Greek former finance minister, that European institutions are technocratic and structurally anti-democratic? In other words, even for people who are still in the European Union, there is this argument that somehow there is a democratic deficit. How do you rebut that argument?
No, it's as you know, I've met Mr. Varoufakis a few times during the Greek crisis when he was finance minister in the Greek government during the financial crisis, and I think he's a very talented and quite attractive ideologist. But his opinions are really interesting, but they have nothing to do with the reality in Europe. Sorry, but maybe I am too blunt, but you can say quite the opposite, that that Europe is too democratic to be able to take fast decisions, and that the authoritarian system in Russia or in China is much more efficient and effective because they don't need procedures and very tiring negotiations. And no, my answer is that the EU is the most democratic international organization which is built by national states, and this is in fact the only way. Not perfect. I am absolutely. I was the main victim of this tiring procedures as the president of the European Council. It was really too difficult even to survive with this hours and days and weeks lasting negotiations and procedures. But this is what the EU is about. There's no other choice. If you want to be together as a national state and institutions, and if you want to advocate high standards and also freedoms, it's like Sisyphus work, not spectacular, very, very tiring, as I said. And okay, I know the Varoufakis is more, as a Greek, he's more like like Herostratus, and it's like quite easy to burn a temple in Ephesus to be as famous as Herostratus one. But I prefer Sisyphus. It's because responsible, reliable politics is about this day after day effort and work, and also procedures and standards.
Talking of hard work, do you think the British have done the rest of Europe a favour? Because anybody, whether on the Varoufakis side or on the Le Pen side, have seen that leaving the European Union, even if you believe like they do that it's undemocratic, and I know you've dealt with that question, but that it's just too hard. It is the work of Sisyphus to leave. And have the British done a favour to the EU27 by showing populist movements that actually exit is a nightmare?
Yeah, in some sense, yes, but the price is too high for me. I mean, this was an impression, but I think that we were able to find another educational, lesson how to protect our unity, not Brexit. I don't like this gambling in politics and or too tough demonstrations, But you're right. As a result, as a political outcome, there is something positive. The 27 were really united during the negotiations with the UK, and also, as you said, even Kaczynski and Orban and other Eurosceptic, Le Pen, Salvini in Italy, he's maybe the best example here. They out of the blue, they stopped the anti-EU narrative. They are still Eurosceptical sometimes. They can criticize Brussels as a too bureaucratic structure. Berlin is always under very massive criticism, and it's quite easy to criticize Angela Merkel for many reasons. For them, I mean, but at the same time, they stopped this clearly anti-European narrative, because in fact no one wants to repeat this experience. I mean, especially that it's also an apparent paradox that people in Poland and in Hungary are the most pro-European nations in Europe, according to also the latest polls. It's still much more than 70% in Hungary and almost 80% in Poland. It's a paradox. I know. Sometimes I feel also surprised and a little bit ashamed why such a pro-European nation can vote for Kaczynski-Orban, but at least it means that we are still, of course, every scenario is possible.
Yes.
And here I feel still quite safe and comfortable when it comes to this very context. I mean, possible exits.
Now, President Tusk, we have 4 minutes left, I think. Time for 2 more questions. One of them relates to exactly what you just raised. It comes from Graham Stone, who says, Mr. Tusk has spoken so eloquently about the motivation for his political outlook, living under authoritarian rule and restrictions on freedom. How is it possible that people who came through the same system are in favor of voting for Kaczynski and a party like the PIS in Poland? Just what you've talked about now, that paradox. But, same upbringing as you in Gdansk that we can see behind you, and yet they take an illiberal route from that same experience. How do we explain that to Graham Stone, who asks the question?
As a historian, I can only say that it's nothing new. It's not a very Polish or very Hungarian phenomenon. Yeah, you are right. Kaczynski was my close friend, and his brother, the former president who died in this air crash in Smolensk, he was my very close friend in Solidarity movement, etc. Yeah, something has happened with them. With Viktor Orban is maybe the most spectacular example. I still remember him as a young liberal activist and we were friends. For me, I have not good answer here, frankly speaking, because Fidesz party, I mean Orban's party, and Civic Platform, and we both, I mean Viktor Orban and myself, we were friends. We and our parties were like twins 10, 15 years ago.
Yes.
And today I have nothing to do with Viktor Orban and with his way of thinking, or Kaczynski. Nothing. We are different on everything. He was pro-Trump, I was anti-Trump. He was pro-Brexit, not openly, but I could see his satisfaction, Schadenfreude, after the referendum, and I was a very dedicated Remainer. He's very pro-Putin. I am anti-Putin. Anti-Putin, if I can use this for this simplification, but you know what I mean. He's enthusiastic towards China and President Xi policy. I am very skeptical. I mean, and cautious here. He's Kaczynski and Orban, and they invented this illiberal democracy idea. I am devoted liberal Democrat, and okay, it's this is one thing. The second one, why people are decided to vote for, as I said, sometimes we have this kind of tendencies of trends and trends. This high tide sometimes for democracy, sometimes for illiberal democracy or authoritarian mood. And okay, maybe you are not able to control the whole process, but at least you have to fight, because, as I said, it's almost 50-50. We are authoritarian and democratic also inside ourselves sometimes. You know what I mean? This is why, for me, the much more important question, how to defeat them. I want to fight with them, not to analyze how they are so effective today, but to fight them and to defeat them. And I still believe that, even I'm 64, but it's not the worst age, as you know, 64, yeah, okay. But I'm still ready to fight it. And if I find, people who are ready to be brother in arms, we will win anyway. And just last thing, because if you allow me, also about Brexit, because some of our colleagues in Europe, also in the UK, they think that some events, some processes are irreversible in politics. And I like this Hannah Arendt's, thought that something can be or becomes, irreversible when people start to believe that something is irreversible. If not, if people still believe that we can reverse something, you are entitled to and with your hopes and chances. And it's never give up. This is what this is my message. Very simple, maybe too simple, and I'm as simple, my guide. And I have no intellectual ambitions, because in politics you have to, as I said, you have to fight and never give up.
You've answered there the very last question, which I was saving to the end, but Sandy Rees-Jones had asked, is it possible to be both passionate and moderate in politics? I think, Donald Tusk, that in the last hour you've shown us that the answer to that is yes, because you have been espousing a so-called moderate position, but doing so with great passion. And that message, never give up, I think applies to Remainers, and you counted yourself as one of us in that remark, but it also applies across the board in politics, and perhaps to everybody in the midst of this pandemic. If we were in a venue, in the Barbican or anywhere else, there would now be warm and grateful applause, I'm sure, from our audience. But on behalf of all of them, nearly 2,000 of them, I'm going to thank you for joining us and giving us your time and your analysis and your passion today. To those watching, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it and that some of your questions were answered. If you did enjoy today, please do join us again in the future. We've got events coming up with the academic Kahinda Andrews, the novelist Kazuo Ishiguro, and Margaret Atwood, among many others. And you can see all the future events listed at theguardian.com/Guardian Live. After this event ends, a small survey will pop up on your screen. It would be great for us if you could take a minute and fill that in, let us know how we're doing. But finally, once more, join me in thanking our guest on Guardian Live for the last hour, President Donald Tusk. Thank you.
Thank you, and safe, healthy, and safe. Good luck for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.